So I've been very interested in heat exposure, specifically using the sauna for years now. And I would say well before it was cool or trendy to even do sauna or heat exposure. But I always wondered, why does heat exposure work? What happens in the body? Why do you feel so good afterwards? And in this video, I want to talk about how heat exposure works in the body and then give you a prescription that you can follow so that you can have the same sort of benefits. So when you put yourself into a heated condition, such as a sauna or a steam room, your body releases these heat shock proteins, which are extremely beneficial for stress adaptation and recovery after exercise. And this is primarily triggered by a rise in your body temperature. So when you put yourself into a hot environment, your peripheral temperature rises, so your arms and legs, and then also your core temperature, your internal organs, the temperature rises there as well. When you're exposed to the high temperature of a sauna, your body perceives this as a stress, which is known as a heat stress. And then as a result, your cells pump out these heat shock proteins or HSPs. The heat shock proteins have a cellular defense mechanism to protect your tissues. They reduce inflammation and then they promote recovery after this stressful event. These things can also be activated with exercise, with oxidative stress, and even cold exposure will turn on these heat shock proteins, which is kind of crazy because it's counterintuitive. But obviously, the best way is to heat your body up to release the effect of the heat shock proteins. What I said earlier is the key to this is that your core temperature needs to rise. When the core temperature rises, it signals this response to release the heat shock proteins. The core temperature is the body's internal organs. It increases more slowly than the peripheral temperature, but still increases significantly during a prolonged sauna event. And you can imagine as you exercise for a longer period of time, your body starts to sweat. It's the same sort of internal heating, which is also great for metabolism. The core temperature in the sauna can rise anywhere from 1.8 to 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And what that equates to is somewhere even from a body temperature of 101 to 104 in more extreme cases. Now, the current guidelines for sauna use are a short session would be 10 to 20 minutes at a time. And that largely varies on one's experience with heat exposure and then also your tolerance for it. A traditional sauna is set at 150 to 195 degrees. Now, as your body gets more and more used to doing heat exposure, 15 minutes might not release that much of a sweat response. You might not notice any heart rate response. So I think we need to change the equation a little bit and say, what sort of measures can I use individually to make sure that I'm getting the benefits of releasing the heat shock proteins, which is really what's the overall benefit of heat exposure. So how can we measure this on our own? The simplest ways that I measure kind of the benefit that I'm receiving in the sauna is one, I look at my sweat rate. Two, I will sometimes wear a heart rate monitor in there. And what's so cool is that at the beginning, my heart rate is pretty baseline. After 10 minutes, it maybe rises to 110 degrees. After 20 minutes, I'm at 125 degrees. At 30 minutes in the sauna, I'm pushing 130 to 140 beats per minute. Very similar to an exercise response. The heart rate rises while you're in the sauna. That's what releases sweat. That's what releases these heat shock proteins. Other things that you can do are use a Borg scale or a rate of perceived exertion. So as you're in there for 5 minutes, it probably won't feel very hard. It's at a 2 to 3 out of 10 on the rate of perceived exertion scale. As that increases, you can judge how exhausting or how tiring is the sauna for your RPE. And what you want to see is somewhere in that 5 to 6 range, 7 to 8 if you're more experienced. If you're getting it above 8, that's you're really pushing your capacity there. So, but the goal is to get a sweat response, get your heart rate up, feel the RPE rise, because those are going to be the signals that these heat shock proteins are being released, which is where a lot of this benefit of using the sauna or doing other heat exposure comes from. So that is why heat exposure works in the body. That's how it works, and that's why you feel so good afterwards.